Okay, so, this book, Start With Why. It's been on our list for a while.
Yeah, it's a classic, isn't it?
Totally. And it just keeps coming up in conversations about, well, I guess pretty much anything to do with like leadership and success, right?
Right, right. Like what makes some people or some companies just like stand out? What gives them that sort of staying power, you know?
Exactly. So we figured, it's high time we took a deep dive into this whole golden circle thing, this whole why, how, what's business, see if we can unpack it a bit.
Sounds good. Always up for a bit of unpacking.
Right. So basically what we're aiming for here is to give you, the listener, a sort of crash course, like the essence of what Sinek's getting at.
Right, the key takeaways.
And hopefully in a way that's like actually useful, right? Not just theoretical, but something you can actually use, in your own work, in your life.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what makes Start With Why it's so powerful, right? It's simple, but it has these implications that kind of ripple outwards.
Yeah. Yeah. So the basic idea, right, is that the people who really inspire us, the ones who really make a difference, they don't start with what they do or even how they do it.
They start with why they do it.
Exactly. And that why, it's not just like making a profit or achieving some external goal.
It goes deeper, right? It's about their purpose, their belief, their cause, the thing that really drives them.
Right, right. So I guess like right off the bat, if you start thinking with why, what are some of the things that kind of jump out at you? What are the sort of immediate takeaways, would you say?
Well, one of the big ones for me is this whole idea of inspiration versus manipulation.
Right.
I mean, think about it. How much of our lives are spent being bombarded by these messages, these ads, these things trying to get us to buy stuff or do stuff or think a certain way?
Right. Yeah, it's constant.
And a lot of it, right, it's based on manipulation, like discounts, promotions, fear, peer pressure, all that kind of stuff.
Playing on our insecurities, our fears. Yeah.
Exactly. And it might work in the short term, right? You might buy something because it's on sale or because you're afraid of missing out.
Or because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah. But it's transactional, isn't it? It doesn't build any real loyalty.
Right. You're not really connecting with the company or the product on a deeper level.
No. Inspiration, though, that's different, right? Inspiration taps into those deeper desires, those beliefs we hold.
So it's about aligning with people's values, their sense of purpose.
Exactly. It's not just selling a product. It's inviting them to be part of something bigger, something they believe in.
I like that, being part of something bigger.
Right. And another key thing is this whole alignment within the golden circle. Your why, your how, and your what, they all need to be in sync.
So it's not enough to just have like a nice, inspiring mission statement.
No. Your why needs to be clear. Your how, your actions, how you bring that why to life, that needs to be consistent.
And the actual stuff you do, the products, the services, they have to like back it all up.
Right. They have to be tangible proof of your belief.
Yeah.
When it all comes together, when it's all aligned, that's when you get that authenticity, that trust.
Right. It all makes sense. It's a system, right? So the book itself, I mean, it really lays this out in a kind of story-driven way, right?
Yeah. Sinek uses a lot of stories, real-world examples to kind of illustrate his points.
Right, which makes it super engaging, I think. So right off the bat, in the introduction, he makes this argument, right, about how inspiring leaders, inspiring organizations, they all kind of think and communicate in the same way.
Yeah. And it all starts with why.
So this isn't like some magical talent, right?
No, it's not about charisma or being born a certain way. It's a discipline, something you can learn, you can practice.
That's good to know. So I guess the rest of the book is kind of like a how-to guide in a way.
In a way, yeah. He focuses on kind of dissecting these stories, these examples of people and organizations that naturally operate from this why-centric perspective.
Okay, cool. So chapter 1, right? He jumps straight into these contrasting stories, Samuel Pierpont Langley and the Wright brothers. Now, I gotta admit, I'm a bit fuzzy on the details.
Oh, right. So basically we're talking turn of the 20th century, the race to achieve powered flight is on.
Right, yeah. Everyone's trying to get a plane in the air.
Exactly. So you've got Samuel Pierpont Langley, this well-respected scientist, tons of funding from the U.S. War Department.
Big money, big connections.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards. He's got this amazing lab, a team of experts, everyone's watching him.
We gotta beat, right.
Right. But then you have the Wright brothers, Wilbur and Orville.
Running a bicycle shop in Ohio.
Exactly. And they've got, like, no money, no government backing, no fancy degrees in aeronautics.
So completely different situation. David versus Goliath kind of thing.
Totally. And yet, they were driven by this deep passion for flight. They believed it could change the world.
And they spent hours and hours like tinkering, experimenting, right?
Yeah, in their bicycle shop.
Yeah.
And they had this small team, local guys, helping them out.
Driven by the same passion, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. They were all in it together, even though there wasn't a lot of financial reward at that point.
So spoiler alert, it was the bicycle guys who made history, right?
Yep. The Wright brothers. First successful powered flight, December 1903.
And Langley.
Well, he kept trying, but he never quite got there. And what's interesting, right, is that he basically gave up pretty soon after the Wright brothers succeeded.
Almost like he lost interest.
Yeah, yeah. So why do you think that is? Why did Langley, with all his advantages, fail, while the Wright brothers, with so much less, they achieved this incredible feat?
It's a good question, isn't it?
It is. And Sinek argues, right, it all boils down to the why. Langley's motivation, it seems, was more about being first, the prestige, the recognition.
The fame and fortune.
Yeah, yeah. His focus was on building a flying machine. And maybe the how, the scientific principles and all that.
But not so much the why.
Right. He didn't have that deep driving purpose, that burning belief that the Wright brothers had.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Totally. And that why, that belief that flight could change the world, that's what fueled their perseverance, their creativity.
It's what inspired their team, kept them going when things got tough.
Absolutely. It's a powerful example of how resources alone aren't enough. You need that underlying conviction.
Yeah. You know, it makes me think about like all those startups, right? The ones that really take off, the ones that become something big.
Yeah.
Often it seems like it's not just about the product or the business plan or the funding.
It's about the passion, right? The founder's belief in what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. They have this vision, this why, and it's contagious. It draws people in. It inspires them.
Totally. And I guess on the flip side, you've got these big established companies, right, that seem to have lost their way.
Yeah, they kind of get stuck, don't they?
They do. Even with tons of resources, they just kind of plod along.
Like they've lost that spark.
Exactly. And maybe it's because they've lost sight of their why. They're so focused on the what, on maintaining market share, on profits.
They've forgotten why they started in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a recipe for stagnation, isn't it? So I guess the Wright brothers story is a reminder that why, that belief, it's the most valuable asset you can have.
It's like the engine that drives everything else.
Totally.
So moving on, chapter 2, right? It takes a kind of different perspective, this alternative perspective.
Yeah. This is where Sinek really dives into this whole inspiration versus manipulation thing.
And this feels so relevant, right? I mean, we're constantly being bombarded with messages, with ads, with all this stuff trying to influence us.
Oh, yeah, totally. And Sinek's point is that a lot of it's based on manipulation, right?
Like we were saying earlier.
Yeah, exactly. It's about using these tactics, these tricks, to get us to do something, to buy something, to think a certain way.
And he lists a bunch of them, right? Like price drops, promotions, fear-mongering.
Peer pressure, novelty, those aspirational messages.
Yeah.
You know, the ones that promise you a better version of yourself, but don't really deliver.
Right. They play on our desires or insecurities.
Yeah. And it can be pretty effective in the short term, but it's not sustainable, is it?
No, because like as soon as that sale ends or that fear subsides or that new thing loses its shine, you're back where you started.
Right. There's no real connection. No loyalty.
And he gets some pretty interesting examples, right? Like the whole thing about the car industry and cashback incentives.
Oh, yeah, like General Motors, right. They were offering these huge cashback deals.
And it worked, right? At least in the short term.
Yeah, they saw a bump in sales, but it actually ended up hurting them in the long run.
Because it ate into their profits, right?
Exactly. And it also kind of trained customers to expect these incentives.
So they weren't buying GM cars because they, like, loved the brand or anything?
No, they were buying them to get a deal. And as soon as another company offered a better deal, they'd be off.
So it creates this race to the bottom, right? Where everyone's just trying to undercut each other.
Yeah. And it's all based on price, not on any kind of deeper connection.
Right. It becomes this transactional thing. And Sinek even talks about this concept of breakage in rebates.
Yeah, where companies kind of rely on the fact that not everyone will actually redeem those rebates.
So they're basically profiting off of unfulfilled promises.
Yeah, it's a bit sneaky, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then there's this whole thing about aspirational marketing, right?
Like gym memberships, right?
Exactly. You see those ads, those images of these fit, healthy people, and you think, yeah, I want to be like that.
I'm going to sign up. I'm going to get in shape.
Yeah, yeah. And you get that initial surge of motivation, but then what?
Life gets in the way. The motivation fades.
Exactly, because there's no real why there.
No, it's just this vague aspiration, not a deep-seated commitment.
Yeah, yeah. And peer pressure too, right? That's another form of manipulation.
Everyone else is doing it, so you should too.
Yeah, but it's based on fear, isn't it? Fear of being left out, of being different.
Not on any real belief or conviction.
Exactly. So I guess the takeaway from this chapter is that manipulation, it might get you results in the short term, but it's not a sustainable strategy.
It doesn't build trust. It doesn't create loyalty.
It's like building a house on sand, right?
Yeah, yeah. So to build something that lasts, you need that deeper connection, that shared belief.
You need inspiration.
So I guess chapter 3 is where he really introduces this golden circle framework, right?
Yeah, yeah. This is where it all comes together.
So can you remind us, what are the 3 circles?
Sure. So the outermost circle is what? This is the tangible stuff, the products you sell, the services you offer.
The easy stuff to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. Then you've got the middle circle, how. This is how you do what you do.
Yeah.
Your processes, your methods, your unique approach.
The secret sauce, in a way.
Exactly. And then at the center, the core, you have why.
The purpose, the belief, the reason for being.
Exactly. And Sinek's argument is that most organizations, they communicate from the outside in.
So they start with the what, then maybe the how.
Yeah, yeah. We make great computers, want to buy one, that kind of thing.
Right, right. But the really inspiring organizations, they do it the other way around.
They start with why. Then they talk about how they bring that why to life.
And finally, they mention what they do.
And he gives that great example of Apple.
Right? Yeah. Classic Apple.
So like a typical computer company might say, we make great computers. They're fast, they're powerful, they've got all the latest features. Want to buy one.
Straight to the point.
Yeah, yeah. But Apple, they might say something like, everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently.
We make our products beautifully designed, simple to use, user-friendly. And, oh yeah, we also make great computers. Want to buy one?
Exactly. They start with their why. And it's so much more compelling, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's not just about the computer. It's about being part of something bigger.
Yeah, yeah. It's about challenging conventions, thinking outside the box.
And it's funny because they don't even mention the computer until the very end.
Right, because the what is just the proof, the tangible manifestation of the why.
It's like, if you believe what we believe, if you're into what we're into, then this computer is for you.
Exactly. And Sinek's famous quote, right? People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
It's so true.
And he gives another example, right? Creative Technologies MP3 player versus the iPod.
Yeah, yeah. Back in the day.
Both basically did the same thing, right? Played music. But Creative, they advertised a 5 GB MP3 player.
Focusing on the specs.
Yeah, yeah. Apple, though, they said 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Focusing on the benefit, the experience.
Exactly. And it hints at a why, right?
Yeah.
This idea of simplifying things, making music more accessible, more portable.
And the iPod obviously took off.
Big time. And I think it's because they were selling more than just a device. They were selling a feeling, an idea.
And it makes sense, right? If you have a strong why, you don't need to constantly be differentiating yourself on features and price.
No. Your purpose sets you apart. You're inherently different.
And that's a powerful position to be in, isn't it?
Totally. So I guess the question is, what's your why?
Exactly. And can you articulate it? Can you communicate it to others in a way that resonates?
That's the key, isn't it?
So moving on, chapter 4, right? This is not opinion. This is biology.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
Because he starts talking about the brain, right?
He does. He brings in the science, which is always cool.
Yeah. So basically he's saying that this golden circle, this why, how, what thing, it's not just a nice theory.
It's actually how our brains work.
How we make decisions.
Exactly. And he focuses on 2 parts of the brain, the limbic brain and the neocortex.
Okay, so the limbic brain, that's the more emotional part.
Yeah. It's responsible for our feelings, our gut reactions, trust, loyalty.
This stuff that's hard to explain, right?
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that the limbic brain, it doesn't have the capacity for language.
So it can't really put things into words?
Right. Now, the neocortex, that's the more rational part of the brain.
The thinking part.
Yeah, and that's where language comes in. So basically, Sinek's saying that the why and the how, those are connected to the limbic brain.
The emotional part?
And the rational stuff, the features and benefits, that's connected to the neocortex.
So when we make a decision based on our gut feeling, that's the limbic brain talking.
Exactly. And then we might use our neocortex to rationalize that decision.
To come up with reasons why it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. But the initial impulse, the thing that really drives us, that comes from the limbic brain, from that sense of why.
And that's why, I guess, when we connect with a company's why, it just feels right.
Yeah, even if we can't fully explain why, it's speaking to that deeper part of us.
And it creates trust, right? Because it feels authentic, genuine.
Totally. And to illustrate this point, Sinek actually brings back the Sneetches from Dr. Seuss.
The Sneetches! I haven't thought about those guys in ages.
Yeah, it's a classic, isn't it? So you remember how the plain belly Sneetches, they were obsessed with fitting in with the star belly Sneetches?
Yeah, they wanted those stars so badly.
They did. And they were willing to pay all this money to get them, even though it was like completely irrational.
Yeah, it didn't really make any sense.
But it highlights this basic human need to belong, to be part of something.
And I guess when a company's why resonates with us, it fulfills that need in a way.
It does. It makes us feel like we're part of something bigger, something we believe in.
That's a cool connection. So this whole why thing, it's not just like a marketing strategy.
No. It taps into something deeper, something fundamental about how we're wired.
So I guess it's important to really understand your own why, right?
Absolutely. And to be able to articulate it, to communicate it in a way that connects with others.
So chapter 5, clarity, discipline, and consistency.
Yeah. This is where it gets practical, right?
Yeah, like, okay, you got your why, now what?
Exactly. And Sinek's point is that having a why is just the beginning.
It's not enough to just like have it in your head.
No. You have to be able to bring it to life.
Yeah.
And to do that, you need clarity, discipline, and consistency.
So clarity, I guess that means really understanding your why, being able to articulate it clearly.
Exactly. You have to know what you believe. Then discipline.
Discipline of how.
Yeah, your actions have to be aligned with your why. You have to walk the talk.
And consistency.
Consistency of what?
Yeah.
Everything you do, everything you say, it has to prove what you believe.
It's about being authentic.
Totally.
Okay.
And the golden circle only works when all three are in sync.
It's like a three-legged stool.
Yeah, if one leg is missing, the whole thing collapses. And Sinek uses Southwest Airlines as an example of a company that really nails this.
Oh, yeah. Southwest.
So their why, as Sinek sees it, is about serving the customer well.
And that extends to their employees too, right?
Yeah. They believe that if you treat your employees well, they'll treat the customers well.
So it's all connected.
And their how, that's all about efficiency, keeping costs low.
So they can offer affordable fares.
Exactly. And well, that's airline travel, obviously.
But it's the consistency that's impressive, right?
Totally. Like, their 10-minute turnaround time?
Oh, yeah. How they can get a plane in and out super fast?
It's legendary. And it's not just about efficiency for its own sake. It's a how that supports their why.
Because it keeps costs down, allows them to offer more flights, serve more customers.
Exactly. And Sinek contrasts this with United and Delta, who both tried to launch these low-cost carriers.
Ted and Song, right?
Yeah. But they didn't really work out, did they?
No, they kind of fizzled out.
And I think it's because they were just trying to copy Southwest's how, offering cheaper flights, a more casual vibe.
But they didn't have that clear why.
No. It was just about being cheap, not about any deeper purpose.
So the customers didn't really connect with it.
And I guess that's the lesson, right? You need all three. You need a clear why, a disciplined how, and a consistent what.
Otherwise, it's just a facade.
Yeah, it's all surface, no substance.
Yeah, so chapter 6, the emergence of trust.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Because, trust is so important, isn't it?
Absolutely. In everything, really. But especially in business, in relationships.
So how does Sinek tie trust to the golden circle?
Well, he argues that trust emerges when that why, how, what is in balance.
When it's all aligned,
Yeah.
consistent.
Exactly. And he uses this great example of Gordon Bethune, who turned around Continental Airlines.
Oh, yeah. I vaguely remember that.
So Continental, they're in a bad way, right? Losing money, bad morale.
Yeah, not a good place to be.
No. And Bethune comes in, and he's got this clear why. He wants to restore pride and profitability to the airline.
bring it back to its former glory.
Yeah, yeah. And his how is all about empowering employees, improving on-time performance, being transparent with everyone.
So a very people-centric approach.
Totally. And the what's, well, that stayed the same. It's still airline travel. But the experience was completely different.
Because the culture had changed, the why was clear.
Exactly. And Bethune, he fostered trust by being very accessible, by communicating openly about the challenges, and even by implementing a bonus system tied to on-time flights.
So everyone was working towards the same goal.
Yeah, yeah. And Sinek's point is that trust is essentially about shared values, shared beliefs.
So we trust people who we believe share our values.
Exactly. And we can see that in the way they communicate their why and in the way they prove it through their what.
It's like, I see what you believe, and I believe it too.
Yeah, yeah. And he also talks about immigrants being drawn to a country's why, like the American dream.
Right, that idea of opportunity, freedom, a better life.
Exactly. And it's that belief, that why, that attracts people, that makes them trust that this country will offer them what they're looking for.
And there's that story about Ernest Shackleton, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. The explorer, the endurance expedition.
Yeah, yeah. And he was very particular about who he hired, wasn't he?
He was. He wasn't just looking for the most skilled sailors. He was looking for people who believed in the mission.
People who were resilient, who had that adventurous spirit.
Exactly. He was hiring for why. And it's interesting because despite all the hardships they faced, they all survived.
Yeah, no one was left behind.
Which is pretty remarkable. And I think it speaks to the power of having a shared why, a shared purpose, especially when things get tough.
And it makes sense for companies too, right? Like if you hire people who are already passionate about your why, they're going to be more engaged, more committed.
Totally. It's easier to inspire people who are already inspired.
And then to try and motivate people who aren't.
Exactly. And Sinek tells this story about two stonemasons.
Right. Oh, yeah, yeah. I love that story.
So you've got these two guys, they're both laying bricks, and someone asks them, "What are you doing?"
And the first guy says, "I'm laying bricks."
Right. Just stating the obvious. But the second guy, he says, "I'm building a cathedral."
And it's the same job, right? But the difference in their attitude, their sense of purpose, it's huge.
Huge. And I think that's what Sinek's getting at. When you have a shared why, when you understand the bigger picture, it changes everything.
You're not just doing a job, you're contributing to something meaningful.
Exactly. And that builds trust, it builds loyalty, it creates a stronger team.
So, Chapter 7, how great leaders inspire everyone to take action.
Yeah, this is where we really get into the nitty-gritty of leadership.
So how does this whole why thing, how does it play into leadership?
Well, Sinek revisits the Wright brothers and Langley, right? And he argues that the Wright brothers, they were able to inspire their team because they had this clear why.
That belief in the transformative power of flight.
Exactly. And that created this collaborative environment where everyone was motivated, everyone was contributing. Langley, on the other hand, he was more about hiring talent.
Paying people to do a job.
Yeah, yeah. And his team, they might have been skilled, but they weren't necessarily driven by that same passion.
And that's why, I guess, when the going got tough, they didn't have the extra push.
Right. And Sinek also highlights Southwest's 10-minute turnaround time as an example of inspired action.
Because it wasn't something that management imposed on the employees.
No. It came from the employees themselves.
They believed in the company's mission and they trusted each other to find a solution.
Exactly. And they came up with this incredibly efficient process that benefited everyone.
And Sinek actually provides a definition of trust here, right?
He does. He says that trust arises when individuals feel safe, knowing that others are acting based on shared values and beliefs.
So it's about feeling like you're part of a team, that you're all working towards the same goal.
And that you can rely on each other.
And he contrasts this with the story of Barings Bank, right?
Oh, yeah. The rogue trader, Nick Leeson.
Yeah, who basically brought the whole bank down.
He did. And Sinek's point is that this happened because the bank had lost its why.
It had become all about profits, about individual gain.
Exactly. And there was no trust, no sense of shared purpose.
And people were just looking out for themselves.
Yeah. And when that happens, well, bad things can happen.
And he uses this analogy of a net, right?
He does. He says that trust within an organization is like a net.
It gives you the confidence to try new things, to take risks.
Because you know that if you fall, the net will catch you.
And he gives this inspiring example of Brigadier General Lori Robinson in the Air Force.
Yeah, she's a great leader. And her why is all about clearing a path for others to succeed.
About empowering your team.
And that created so much trust so much respect that people were actually requesting to work with her.
Because they knew she had their backs.
Exactly. And the point is that passion comes from feeling part of something you believe in.
So if you want to inspire passion in your team, you need to create that environment of trust, of shared purpose.
And if you don't, well, then self-interest takes over.
Mm.
And Sinek ends the chapter by reiterating Herb Kelleher's philosophy at Southwest, really.
Employees first, then customers, then shareholders.
Yeah, and it's not just a slogan, it's how they operate. Host speaker.